Hi, in today's video I'm going to show you how to use some scraps rather than throw them out. As you're doing card making, you end up with a great deal of scraps of different shapes and sizes, and some you just throw them right away, but some, when you look at them, using your little bit of imagination, you can think of ways to make it a little better. So if you remember this card that I just made in a video a couple of days ago, I used 3 different pieces of paper to cut these banners here, and that means for each piece of paper I got a little bit of extra bit of cut off as I used the die cut to cut the shapes. And rather than throw it away, I thought maybe I can do something with that because those were very particularly shaped. So doing a little bit of moving around, I came up with this card design using those 3 pieces, and I'd like to show you this card today. The inks that I'm using today is Memento Bahama Blue, Summer Sky. I'm also using Versafine Onyx Black, and Distress ink, this is Rusty Hinge. I have used the Stitched Shapes framelits to make this square, and I'm using the Joyful Season stamp set from Stampin Up to get this bird. This is a 2-step bird. You stamp the outline in one color and his actual body in another, and this is his little beak also. I'm also using Friendly Phrases by Stampendous. I'm using this little flourish here and the Thinking of You image. Okay, of course, and tape and adhesive as necessary. Alright, let's just start right in. It'll go together really quickly. Alright, let me move aside the original card and show you the pieces that I needed. I am using for this panel, I have a piece of white paper, and I've already cut this stuff apart to make it a little easier. And the blue mat, I've already pre-die cut this square. I show you in another video how to use the Big Shot and make that shape. I also show you in another video how to make that embossing folder. In order to make these 3 pieces of paper lined up together long enough for me to make them fit, I got a little bit of copy paper scrap, and of course my card base. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold, so my voice is a little cracky. The thing you need is you have to get the mat for this feature panel here. You can cut a separate piece of paper, but to save a little bit, I'm going to use the mat because it won't be seen because it'll be hidden behind this white paper. So I'm going to take a die cut which I have, which will cut squares for me. This is the closest size that I need. This is a little bigger than I'm going to need. So I'm going to take this panel and take this and making sure that I am not too far to the edges, and run this through my Big Shot so that I can cut out this square here. You could also use your paper trimmer and lay this on the paper trimmer, and using your blade just cut out what you need in there, but my hand is not steady enough for that, so I'm just going to use this. The size that we're trying to get is about 2 3/4 inches. Be right back while I punch this out. Okay, now I just pop that right out, so you can see that this will not be seen at all. That's a way to save a little bit of paper. And when I get this all punched up, I will just lay it in place with the proper dimensions that I want, and just trim this part off. Alright, now to move all this out of the way. As I said, I'm going to use this to line these things up because I'm going to, since these are wider than this one, I'm going to let this one be the decider about how I cut it. So a little bit of tape on here, and just line this up relatively straight. I'm going to try to use the grid paper to help me with this. I'm trying to get the points straight and working together. And then finally this one. That's a little crooked. There. Press it down. Now I'm going to take this to my paper cutter and trim the ends evenly. Be a little tricky because the paper is relatively small cut off, and sometimes it can jam in the paper cutter. And I'll just leave that because it's not in the way at all. Now for the stamping. Using my MISTI tool, and since I'm going to be using photopolymer stamps, I have to use the black foam insert that comes with the MISTI. Putting the die cut in the lower corner, I first need to get my outline of my cardinal in place. For this card, instead of it being a cardinal, I'm going to make it a blue jay, and you can see that the body of the card is stained red from when I made a cardinal, but it doesn't affect anything because it's still clean. So first I transfer the stamp of the outline to the MISTI, excuse me, and then I use my black Onyx and stamp the outline of the bird. If it didn't come good the first time, I could stamp it again before I moved it. And now I'm cleaning the outline because I need to put the body of the bird in the place of it. Excuse me, still fighting that cold. So you just line up the body over where you have stamped the outline, and once you're sure you have it, you transfer it to the door and make sure that your paper doesn't move. I'm holding it down with my magnet, and I got my lightest of my blues, the Summer Sky, and stamp that onto the bird. And I wanted to have a variegated effect, so I've got the darker blue, as you can see in the sample, and I'm going to stamp the darker blue, and then using my paper towel, wipe away some of the blue to give it an ombre effect. And that's how I got the multicolored bird. So cleaning the first stamp, and when I put the stamp on the door, I didn't realize it at first, but I put it in the wrong place, but you'll see me move it later. And now the little beak part is, I line it up on his face, transfer it to the door, and taking the distress ink, do the beak. You could use a darker ink than I have chosen here if you wanted, but I thought it was fine. And now I'm going to put the sentiment in the corner. And the MISTI, you do the same thing over and over again. You just transfer it to the door after you know where you want it, and just stamp it. The MISTI makes it really, really easy to breathe through your stamping, especially if you're making multiple copies of the same card. And that's when I realized that the door wasn't closing because the bird was in the way. And I was happy with how that came out. And now I've moved on to do the inside of the card. Be sure that you have the valley side on the outside of the card when you do your stamping. It makes a stronger fold if you do that. And I forgot to mention the sentiment stamp I used for the inside from the same stamp set. Again, I'm using the Onyx black for the sentiment. And that little flourish stamp from the stamp set, I'm going to stamp it in blue underneath the words. I tried this to do at first with the words blue and the sentiment black, but I didn't care for how that looked, so I switched it around for this card now. And I was very satisfied with how it looked after I made that change. And now moving on to the front of the card again, I'm taping the panel down to the square, making sure that I'm lining it up to the lower part because I'm going to trim that off. Sorry I didn't have it all the way in the view so that you could see it, but I am basically just trimming off the selvage ends of the blue paper to give it a nice border around it. And now I'm temporarily holding it in place so that I can see where I want to stamp that little flourish. And I've inked it with the black. I've transferred it to a smaller block and pressing it down, and I got a good coverage for that. Now the final assembly of the card. Being sure when I tape the white panel not to tape where the hole is. It's not going to really matter in this case because this will be completely covered, but it would matter if it wasn't going to be covered. And now I'm closing my card front with my bone folder, and I'm going to glue that matte panel, being sure that I put a little bit extra tape over the dotted Swiss area because that'll be raised out, and I want to make sure that I got a good adhesion to the front of the card. And I checked one more time to make sure that I was not putting this on incorrectly. And now I'm using foam tape to add a little bit of dimension to the panel. I just measured out 3 pieces, generally the same length, and put the first one at the bottom, and then the top, and then in the middle, evenly spaced. And now using that panel, I'm going to make sure that I have allowed enough space from the top of the card for the little extra bit to cover, and I have too much of the white, so I had to trim that off. And just making sure I have a good bit of ink, excuse me, tape, so that it adheres to the dots. And it's a little crooked, I realize it, so I moved it right at the end there. And once you're sure that you have it straight where you need it, then go ahead and press it down. And it looks good. So that's my card today. I hope that you have picked up a little bit of techniques to help you work through your scrap pieces. The color, I could probably made a better color if I had used the green matte instead of the blue, but I like this blue for this bird. It's very simple to do, and the only thing holding you back is a little bit of imagination. And I hate wasting stuff, so I thought this was a good use of those little bits. I'm going to make about 10 cards identical to this. And that's my video today. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.